Session. We will start. Sadia? She here? Thank you.
All right. So do you want me to kick it off? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, mayor, members of council, city manager, city clerk. I'm Sadia Sattar, the Director of Budget and Management Services here at the City of Raleigh. Today, I will share with you all an overview of our engagement efforts around the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget. Our goal is to share results of the Community Budget Priorities Survey and provide City Council with an overview of the pilot engagement process around the budget that we conducted earlier this year. Later today, you will be hearing a presentation from Planning and Development about the department's proposed fee raise for fiscal year 24. And finally, you will hear from the city's enterprise funds to include stormwater, solid waste services, and Raleigh Water. Of these three enterprise funds, Solid Waste Services functions as a hybrid enterprise as it continues to receive a general fund subsidy each year. We will also be returning in April to update City Council on the city's CIP, along with grants and parking fees. So to start, I wanted to share with City Council our goal for our first ever community engagement process around the budget. We will provide a high-level overview of results from the Community Budget Priorities Survey. We will also share what we heard from our residents as we conducted 4 focus groups. And finally, we will wrap up with our key takeaways for the upcoming fiscal year. So before we dive in to the fiscal year 2024 budget engagement process, I wanted to share with you all our goal for this budget cycle, which was to hear as many voices as possible from our community and to build a budget reflecting their preferences and priorities, ensuring equitable outcomes for all. As we continue to build on the engagement process around the budget, this goal will continue to be our compass. The fiscal year 2024 Community Budget Priorities Survey was open from January 3rd to February 28th this year. We are proud to share that our survey received a whopping 3,107 responses. That's 257% more than just a year ago. So how did we manage this? Well, it was a result of a lot of hustle and hard work from the work of BMS staff. Through our collaboration with communications, we partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a solid social media campaign. We distributed 700 flyers, including Spanish translations, to City of Raleigh locations, Raleigh locations at Wake County libraries, all of the city's community centers, and even shared digital posters of the survey on Go Raleigh buses. Finally, we kicked off a pilot engagement process around the budget to include focus groups, 2 which were virtual and 2 in person at Green Road and Tarboro community centers, totaling a total of 26 residents. So what did our residents say? Well, we do want to caution City Council that our survey was not randomized. It was completely volunteer-based. So these results may not be statistically valid, but these results are our findings based on the 3,000 plus community residents who volunteered to take our survey. Here's a snapshot of the demographics of folks that took our survey. Again, not representative of the Raleigh community, and I just want to be open and honest and upfront about this. About 47% of the folks that took our survey identified as female, or just a tad bit over 60% identified as white. The annual household income of almost 40% of the folks taking our survey was $100,000 or more. The majority of individuals taking our survey were between the ages of 35 to 64 years old, followed by 20 to 34-year-olds, and 73% of the folks answered that they own their home. I do want to also mention that a lot of the individuals chose not to answer this demographic information. So based on survey results, what do our residents want us to spend more of our budget on? Well, our residents want us to spend more on providing affordable housing options, reducing traffic accidents and congestion, as well as providing a connected, safe, and reliable Go Raleigh bus and transit system. What do our residents want the city to spend the same or less on? Residents seem to be happy with the city's creative and cultural ecosystem. They also identify it easy to pay their bills and fees here at the city's municipal building. And they are happy with the quality entertainment venues the city currently has. So in addition to the results just mentioned previously, Budget and Management Services staff also conducted an important satisfaction analysis of city service areas. This allows the city to hone in on the services that are of the highest importance to residents and in which residents are the least satisfied with. Based on what we heard, here are the top 5 areas with the highest importance satisfaction rankings. For example, providing affordable housing options and reducing traffic accidents or congestion had the highest importance satisfaction ranking for City of Raleigh residents that took the survey. This suggests that residents consider these areas of high importance, but are least satisfied with them. We also received thousands of comments in our survey as well. And while many focused on providing quality, affordable housing and such, here's a snapshot of some other concerns made by residents as part of the survey process. As you can see, residents want us to also preserve the tree canopy. They want us to incentivize the reduction of organic waste. They also want us to scale back mass transit needs. They also think it would be pretty awesome if we highlighted some of the wins that this city has had recently. And residents also want us to focus on development and educational opportunities. These survey comments also make us realize that residents actually need a little bit of understanding about the services that are provided by the state versus the county versus the city, and BMS will continue to ensure that this happens in the future. So, focus groups. As a brand new process for the City of Raleigh, Budget and Management Services hosted 2 virtual and 2 in-person pilot focus groups to seek input about the city's budget. Participants for these sessions were selected based on whether they said yes to participating further by attending a session as the last question on our survey. So all 4 focus groups started with an overview of the city's general fund budget, followed by a series of discussion questions, which prompted participants to share their priorities, their preferences, and concerns for the upcoming budget process. These discussion questions were geared toward asking participants their top needs for the city in the next months and how they think the city could meet its needs. We also asked residents to name a service that they would like the city to maintain or improve over the next 12 months. So consistent with survey results and the important satisfaction or IS ratings, providing affordable housing options, which is shown in purple, and transportation and transit safety options shown in your screen here in green were focus group participants' top priority areas. Public safety, which is shown in blue, was the 3rd most commonly discussed topic at our focus group sessions. However, I do want to mention that public safety actually ranked pretty high in our survey, with 66% of survey respondents saying that they were overall satisfied with the public safety needs of the city. So what are our key takeaways, right? To wrap up, residents' highest priorities for the upcoming budget cycle include affordable housing options, reduction in traffic accidents, and a connected, safe, and reliable Go Raleigh bus and transit system. Budget will continue to evaluate its process to ensure that it's more representative of the people we are serving. Our goal is to continue to build upon and expand community engagement around the budget process next year. Finally, we hope to share with City Council the full results of our Community Budget Priorities Survey by the end of this month. And with that, I want to thank you all and see if you have any questions for me. Councilmember Branch.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just had one because it was striking of the comments that you listed. One was about scale back mass transit needs, but yet transit was the top
Correct.
item.
So again, this shows you a plethora of comments that we received in our survey. We did ask folks what they thought was more important, what they thought they were most satisfied with, what they weren't satisfied with. But then comments like these were also important to our residents, which is why we highlighted them in this survey as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think what it said, though, was more focus on micromobility. They said Uber. And I know that we have a micromobility contract, I believe, that we're working on right now, which would address that issue. So it wasn't mass transit per se. It was like, can we do micromobility?
So I just wanted to highlight it.
Yeah.
That's really why I brought it up, just to highlight that we have these conflicts. And as council people, council members, we have to manage through these conflicts. And we have to try to figure out, the best approach and balancing everything that we're responsible for. And also leveraging partners. Again, affordable housing, again, I say county help.
Well, it's not
leveraging
just the
partners.
county, it's also
Nonprofits and builders and everybody else.
Yes.
So
Yep.
so it's all about, and working with the state, because I understand the state is having interesting meetings around housing now.
They are. Councilmember Melton?
I appreciate the feedback. Obviously, when we're looking at an engagement process, there's always room for growth.
Absolutely.
We got to keep moving the finish line or the goalpost. This is one of the instances where I'm okay with us moving the goalpost because we got to keep bringing people into the tent. But to a couple of comments that I heard, it was really interesting last year when we were in Salt Lake City for the intercity visit. We had an entire transit work session with the leadership in Salt Lake City. And some of the feedback that we heard there was there's a lot of growing pains around transit, that when the construction is happening and changes in land use around transit are happening, folks will be upset, but then when the service is provided, they end up enjoying it. And so I think we have to remember that we have to have our eye on the big picture, I think, as a council, and that we're not the only city that has grappled with some of these issues, and we have some good guidance in some of our peer cities to look for examples. But what this survey response says to me is that most of the residents of Raleigh, or majority that were surveyed here, whose data you've captured, they want what were the three things? Were affordable housing, reduction in traffic accidents, and a better transit system. And that's great. I've been beating that drum for 3 years. And so, city manager, let's make it happen.
Well, and that's what these budget hearings are all about. Megan? You go first. You were next, and then Councilmember Jones.
I just wanted to first pause and really shout you out. I think you've worked here just a little bit longer than I have, right? Just a couple months, right? And you really got this off the ground in no time. And so this is really incredible work. So I just wanted to take a second to let you know that we are really appreciative of this work. And then a follow-up question I have, you called out, you were really transparent about how the demographics of these respondents don't exactly match the demographics of our city. And so I was interested in any thoughts you had on how you might enhance this process next go around so we can get responses that are more representative of all our residents.
First of all, thank you so much for the shout out. My entire team is right behind me. None of this would have been possible without any one of them. I said jump. So I said jump and they said how high, right? So I think when I introduced myself to all of you on December 6th of last year, I said I'm really passionate about this stuff, and I am. So this is a start. We know it's not perfect. We know it's not representative of our city, but this is our starting point, and we'll continue to build upon that. And how do we do that? And that was your question. So as I continue in my role and I get to learn the city, I think one of the ways that I would love to get more representation of, Black and brown residents in our city is partnering with nonprofits, partnering with all of you to see if there's an opportunity to come and speak to your constituents. I know Councilmember Patton, we tried to come and speak to y'all, but it was just in the middle of budget season, so I apologize it couldn't be possible. But I think there's opportunities talking to our philanthropic partners in the city. There's also an opportunity talking to our Grasstops leaders in the city, which involves our business community members to see what they've heard. Something that we also want to do is go out into the community and speak to our employees as well. Yes, we want our residents to be featured high in this survey, but our employees, they work here. So what do they want to see from the city as well? So there's definitely room for growth and room for improvement. I was just speaking to Councilmember Jones right before I started, and one of the ways that we want to include more and more folks is we want to expand the engagement process to really start it in the fall instead of starting it in the winter. Because the winter is all about, gung-ho being in those budget numbers and BPS, and we don't want to do that. We want to start in October, November of last year before we head into the holidays when everybody's in a happy mood and hopefully receptive to, us asking them questions. But again, thank you. I really appreciate it. Lots of opportunity to do better, for sure.
Councilmember Jones.
And just to piggyback on that, because I'm really, really excited to see what the work you guys are doing. Last year, I was involved as a resident, a little bit with the budget and really pushing, how are we judging the metrics of how many people we're talking to? So to see a 275% increase just over last year, kudos. I'm so, so excited. And I really appreciate you allowing me to be a part of that and be on the virtual session. And my husband actually got to be a
Yes.
part of the in-person session that you guys did. So great, great, great work. And thank you for continuing to push that because we need it. So I just wanted to say thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Fort.
Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you. And one thing I want to mention is I know our strategic office some years ago did a survey across the city that was scientifically relevant, the way they did polling. So I think maybe the department's leveraging, I know you just got here, but working with them as well and getting surveys out will probably also help. So just another tool in the
Absolutely.
toolbox.
And Mayor Pro Tem Branch, the Office of Strategy and Innovation actually is conducting that survey at the moment. So if, that's, again, randomized, statistically valid, and council will be hearing the results of that survey later on as well. So we work very tightly with Heather's team there at OSI. So that's definitely another opportunity to hear what residents have mentioned in that survey as well as we build the budget for the next year. Thank you.
Councilmember Fort.
Yeah, this one's probably more for the city manager. One of the things that was indicated is that folks want to see how the city is actually winning and how the contributions of citizens is contributing to that. I know we're in the process of getting a new communications director,
Yes.
but again, if you're getting that feedback from the citizens, and I know those of us, previous council, this council, have always said that we want to be able to tell our story so that people know what we're doing. So hopefully when the new person gets on board, that'll be something, one of their first missions is to kind of push out stories about what the city's doing right.
Absolutely. We already have that kind of baked into the expectations right out of the gate for the new person. And in addition to that, just to piggyback off what Ms. Sitar said a few minutes ago, we'll bring forward that community survey, which really is a scientific approach that we do every other year. And so we're going to do that early summer. We get through the budget work sessions, get the budget adopted, and then we're going to bring that forward so that you all can see the aggregate data around all of the categories that the community is concerned about.
And I just want to add to what Councilmember Fort said. From a communication standpoint, we have an excellent team. We don't have to stop. Now is the opportunity to let them kind of cut loose too and come up with ideas and see what they're thinking. So I would encourage us to continue to be thoughtful in how we want to storytell and communicate, because feedback I get a lot of times is, I had no idea the city was doing that. And so it's really important that we up our communication game. Councilmember Jones.
And just one last thing, I wanted to uplift the voices of the community members that I've been speaking to, because a lot of the groups that I work with or that I meet with are so interested and invested in our budget. And I'm really excited to be learning about it, but to know that you are also looking at starting earlier in the fall, it's going to be music to their ears. So I just wanted you to know there are residents who are really excited about that. And so I'm glad those work together.
Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
So next we have Karen Ray on Planning and Development Services.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. I'm Karen Ray, one of the assistant directors with the Planning and Development Department, and Pat is here as well as one of our fiscal analysts, Noah, in case you have any questions that I can't answer. I'd like to share with you some information about our proposed planning and development fee schedule for FY24. Planning and development fees include everything from a rezoning to a single electrical permit and everything in between. These fees used to be managed within the separate planning and development services departments, and when we merged the two groups in 2020, we started to work towards a merged fee schedule. Recently, our team worked on a review of our fee model with the assistance of the Matrix Consulting Group. We provided a copy of the proposed fees, with the proposed fee changes, as well as a high-level memo outlining the work we completed for your review. The primary goal of our work with Matrix was to improve the ease of administration of the model, as well as increase transparency and equitable fee calculation, while striving to achieve 100% cost recovery. In FY 2018, a development fee model was adopted after a consulting project team worked with staff from Finance and Development Services. That model calculated fees based on the time to complete a task, project volume, and expenses related to staff. Staff felt that there was a level of unpredictability in that model that led us to seek assistance in 2022 from Matrix Consulting to update the model. In addition, we wanted to include current and long-range planning fees in the model, as they have historically been excluded. In fact, most of those fees were set by peer benchmarks rather than the cost of providing the service, which caused those fees to fall behind in certain areas, which we'll cover later in the presentation. Throughout this project with Matrix, we spent a lot of time reviewing work effort associated with each fee and reviewing each of the fees to determine opportunities to streamline and simplify the model, which was very important to us. We really focused on understanding what the true cost of each fee was and recognizing areas where work effort had increased or decreased due to process changes. We've kept staff and members of our Development Stakeholders Advisory Committee apprised of our progress periodically throughout this process, and feel that we have developed a much easier model to administer and a solid understanding of true cost of service delivery and work effort for each fee. When discussing what our recommendations would be, staff strongly considered who the true recipient of the service and work effort associated with each activity was. For example, if it is a really common permit, changing the fee too dramatically may have a greater impact on the community and cause contractors to work around the permit process. By careful consideration of the fees, we want to encourage compliance by keeping certain fees low and ensuring there's a level of market competitiveness when benchmarking against other similar or neighboring jurisdictions. One example would be we do not want someone to avoid obtaining a permit for an HVAC changeout, which is very standard, because the fee is too high. If we have it too high, they won't do it, and that can cause significant safety issues. So minimizing the impact and incrementally increasing the fees towards revenue neutrality is important to us. I'm going to share some benchmarking information with you to provide perspective on the recommendations that we're making. When comparing the fees, there are certain key factors to recognize, such as each municipality sets individual policy or goal cost recovery rates, which may be lower than the standard 80 to 100%. Additionally, while fees may be labeled the same, they don't always represent the same level of service. For example, the number of inspections included or the number of reviews. Lastly, there are different development requirements based upon zoning or building regulations within a community, which can affect the cost. This is a conditional use rezoning fee, and it's an example of a fee that has been historically benchmarked and indexed for modest increases, if at all, and therefore the work effort associated with administering this work is not being reflected in the cost of the service delivery. What you'll see is our current fee, the proposed fee, and then the real full cost fee. The demolition permit fee is higher, the full cost fee is higher than many of our peers, and that's primarily because we've had situations in the past where improper demolition caused negative impacts on stormwater and Raleigh water. In making process improvement for the city as a whole, staff is much more hands-on with demolition work to ensure everything is completed properly. The historic landmark designation fee is another example of indexing in the past, and over time, the work effort to administer these designations is significant and not reflected in the true cost of the fee. The next set of fees are, you'll only see the Raleigh current fee and the proposed fee. These were part of a separate subset of the prior model, and because they're based on percentages, the proposal is moving them to their correct and full amount. So this fee would be a common fee associated with, for example, an 80-unit multifamily building. The decrease here represented is mainly due to staff efficiency gain in this area, and therefore we want to recognize the work effort improvement for the community. Again, the goal is to move towards revenue neutrality. The new commercial medium building permit review fee. This fee increase is primarily due to the collapsing of the tiers. We currently have 9 tiers for commercial projects, and by collapsing to 3 tiers, we will be able, this should help us be able to stay more stable over time and reduce fluctuations in the model. So going from 9 tiers to 3. The new commercial small building permit review fee sees the same change as the medium, and that fee increases due to the tiers collapsing. New single-family residence. This fee for the new single-family is going up slightly, and the primary difference in our fee and others is the complexity of our development regulations. In addition, while this is an apples-to-apples comparison, there are different types of apples. So without knowing what each municipality has set their cost recovery at, this is not this is as close as we can get to an equivalent comparison. The zoning permit fee is primarily being driven by cost of staff time associated with administration of the development code, but it's still relatively in line with our peers. As a result of the work on our fee review, we have some outdated fees that we're recommending removing to clean up the fee schedule. We're also adding planning fees into the model that will allow us to better manage those fees in the future. And for the modified fees, the first example is a cleanup item, so the schedule is clearer. And the second item is the change that I was just referencing of moving the 9 tiers to 3 tiers to simplify the model and lead us to revenue neutrality, which is consistent with industry best practice. We are recommending changes to the majority of our fees. We currently have 137 fees, and with this recommendation, 50% of the fees would see a decrease and 42% would see an increase. We have a few specific recommendations. One is that no fee increase or decrease would be more than 10% annually to provide a phased transition to 100% cost recovery for development fees. No building permit fee will be charged below the minimum, which allows us to have a base fee and simplify the fee schedule for our consumers. And lastly, we are recommending that we continue to work towards a target goal of 100% cost recovery. This will allow us to ensure that those who are benefiting from the services are paying their fair share of incurring the costs associated with those services, as well as maintaining integrity of our development requirements.
So I have about 3 questions. We've done an analysis on how much the fees will add to the cost of housing.
I would say that the answer would be no on that. As far as the permits go, we have looked at what the permit increases would be, and we have the information that shows an average permit today compared to an average permit with the new fees, and we can certainly provide that if you'd like to see that.
I would like to see that. And it looks like we still continue to fall in the metrics of our peer cities in most instances. Is that correct?
We went through the fees, and we do still typically fall within the ranges for the peer municipalities in North Carolina.
Okay, could you just let us know where we don't conform with the follow-up?
Sure.
And the third question I had relates to incentivizing affordable housing. You know, one thing we had talked about on a number of occasions is how we can incentivize affordable housing and also accessory dwelling units, cottage courts, and tiny homes. Was any consideration given in doing these fees to how we might be able to maybe eliminate fees or reduce fees to incentivize the construction of affordable housing, or at least make it quicker and easier and less expensive to build that? We all know this all gets handed down. So I'm wondering if that question was taken into consideration.
That is something we've had conversations with the attorney's office about, and at this time I've been advised that that needs some additional work and additional review.
What, may I ask what kind of conversations with the attorney's office?
Whether we can do it or not, and I don't, yeah.
Good afternoon, Pat Young with Planning and Development. The feedback we've received from our colleagues in the Attorney's Office, and of course, Attorney Kibler can speak further to this, is that there are some concerns about just waiving the fee, because there are some principles in law that pertain to the fact that for the equivalent amount of staff work, we should be charging equivalent fees. We think there might be a way to get at that, but we need a little more time with structuring a program that would meet those legal requirements and still either waive or reduce the fees.
So this isn't a state statute, it's just a feeling from the city attorney's office. or
I don't,
sense?
I don't want to I don't want to represent, I'm not an attorney, but I think that there's some case law around this and things of that nature. And it really isn't directly on point to affordable housing. It's about the basis for waiving or modifying fees. I think what the finding, and I believe it's case law, I would have to have the attorneys verify this, is that if it's an equal amount of work, there needs to be an equal fee. And there really is no less work for this review of these cases.
Right.
I hope that helps. We will continue to work with the attorneys to see if we can find a creative way to achieve the policy goal you flagged.
I mean, that is something we've been trying to do, and the number one request is to provide more affordable housing. And so looking at ways we can incentivize housing choice, I think, is important. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I'm looking at your new single-family residence permit fee. Is that per house, that fee? And then I see your valuation of $354. How does that valuation compare to the medium sale prices of homes in the market?
So that would be the median of the permits that we've issued.
Okay.
And the fee would be based on the permit. So it would be dependent on, typically it's one home, one permit.
Okay, so it's one permit per house.
Typically, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Melton?
Thanks for your work on this. Yeah, I have some concern about, some of our fees were substantially higher than everyone except Charlotte, and I don't know that benchmarking off of just Charlotte's a great idea. Though particularly a few of them are thousands of dollars higher, and one in particular that flagged for me is the conditional use zoning fee and then the historic landmark designation fee. And I think both of those are pretty important. One, we've had a lot of historical preservation issues come forward in recent years as our city is growing so much, and folks wanting to take advantage of preserving spaces that are important to the community and important to the history of the city. And then the second piece, the conditional use zoning fee, I think about the public hearing we had just last week with Jessica Peacocks, where she had to submit a conditional use zoning to reopen her family's corner store. She's a young professional doing it on her own, had an attorney at one point, then didn't. And that's a huge barrier to folks that want to just, in this case, provide healthy food to the community. And so I think, one way we get around some of this conditional use zoning fee is we just allow more stuff that we think is good for the community to be built by right, so you don't have to submit the rezoning. But I just wanted to flag that I think there's a impact and equity issue with some of these fees. And I know that the proposed fee and the current fee, but this whole full cost fee issue is the part that is that's worrisome to me.
Yeah, so Councilmember, appreciate your comments. Pat Young again with Planning and Development. As Karen said at the outset, the whole intent here, and I think we did a really good job with the consulting team to look at the true cost of delivering these services. So again, we'd be happy to join you in a conversation about how to make these things simpler or more streamlined. A lot of the fees that are decreasing are because we did make it simpler and streamlined. Many of these were more administrative type reviews. The conditional use zoning is one of the largest because it's a lengthy and complex process. But something I want to emphasize that might have gotten lost in Karen's comments was we did not, in any case, adjust to the full cost fee in terms of our recommendation to you, unless it was within 10% of what the previous fee was. So we want to make sure that there's not more than a 10% impact on any applicant in any given year and move over time to full cost recovery. But did that help address your question at all?
Yeah, and I totally understand changes for fiscal year, where we're going into fiscal year 24. But just because the fee has been substantially higher than some of our peer cities or commensurate to Charlotte, who's also substantially higher for a period of time, I don't necessarily mean think that that's the right way to continue with. I think there's more conversation. For me, I think it may be an issue of when folks say, why do we want to make it easier for certain things to be built by right? Is, well, I don't think folks realize that when you try to submit a conditional use rezoning, you often have to hire a lawyer. You got to pay these fees, which are several $1,000s. That's going to trickle down to the folks that you're trying to rent the space to if it's a housing project, which increases housing costs. And if you're a small private developer, if you're someone who wants to do something like Jessica Peacock's did with her corner store, this can become cost prohibitive. And so I just think it's a bigger conversation.
I think those are some very thoughtful comments for consideration. Do appreciate the work you've done. This is complicated, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, any other questions? All right, next we have Stormwater Management Enterprise. Wayne?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk about Stormwater's proposed fiscal year 24 budget. I am Wayne Miles. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager in Engineering Services Department. I'd like to start off with just a brief review of Stormwater's mission to set the context. Our mission is to manage stormwater to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth for the community. And this mission truly is a community effort. It takes the support of City Council, city staff, city management. We have the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission, which you have appointed, that help meet monthly and give us guidance and policy advice. And really, as you see in this picture, it takes the whole community. This is from a workshop that we put on to help educate our community members on how to do stream restoration. We do a lot of work, but we have 2,000 miles of stream, so we can't do it all ourselves. It really takes truly a community effort to manage stormwater. Our vision is to be the smartest stormwater program possible to economically and equitably achieve our mission. In short, to be stormwater smart. And we apply that stormwater smart vision to everything we do. And it starts with outreach and engagement. We partner with community groups to reach out and help the community be smarter about how to avoid risks during large storms. Hurricane season is going to be starting here in a few months, and we want to help the community be prepared. We want them to understand the risks of urban flooding and not to drive across flooded streets, and how to stay safe and how to be prepared. But we do a lot of other things too. We review development plans to make sure they're in compliance with our standards, and do inspections during those construction of those private developments. We do a lot of water quality work. Green stormwater infrastructure is a big part of what we do to try to mitigate the impacts of development and improve water quality. We do watershed planning, asset management. We work closely with the stormwater maintenance group that we fund within Transportation Field Services. They do all the maintenance, the catch basin cleaning, the pipe inspection, and pipe construction to help keep our system performing well. Floodplain management, early warning systems, and then finally, the part that we're going to be talking about today is the utility financial management. All of these pieces have to work in concert to really deliver to our community an effective stormwater program. We do face many challenges. Flooding is one of those. We did not have floodplain maps before 1978, and there was a lot of development that went in before that period of time, before we had regulations, and a lot of that development went into very vulnerable locations before that time. We did not have stormwater detention requirements before 2003, so all of the building that went in before 2003 was not mitigated. So when you couple that with the climate change impacts we're seeing bigger storms, higher intensity storms, more frequent storms. All of that can lead to increased challenges related to flooding. Aging infrastructure. We've really ramped up our asset management program, our condition assessment program, to televise and look at underground infrastructure and get a handle on its condition so that we can manage that risk and put in a replacement and rehabilitation program to try to mitigate those problems before they create failures. And finally, water quality. A lot of emphasis on water quality. We want to be good stewards of the Neuse River and the tributaries that we help manage, and we're implementing a lot of programs to do that. Floodplain regulations. With the support of City Council, we changed our regulations to restrict no structures, no fill in the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain that went into effect last year. That over time will continue to help our city be more resilient to those large storm events. We've also put in a flood early warning system that is one of the top in the country to really help give us proactive and predictive understanding of where flooding is about to occur. That gives us extra time to get the word out to keep people safe. We do a lot of capital improvement projects, whether those be culverts, pipe replacements, flood mitigation projects, and lots of green stormwater infrastructure. We have implemented over 200 individual green stormwater infrastructure projects here in the city. Very proud of that program, and that really helps to mitigate the impacts, not only of development that is occurring, but it allows us to go back and help mitigate some of that previous development that was put in without stormwater controls. And we're helping to support green stormwater infrastructure and mitigation of other city departments. As an example, the Dix Plate Plaza, the Gibson Plate Plaza project, Stormwater has contributed additional funding to implement green stormwater infrastructure above and beyond what's required by regulations. So we're adding bioretention, we're adding a wet meadow to help improve water quality and protect water quality of Rocky Branch, which is a Walnut Creek tributary. Let me touch a little bit on how our stormwater fee works. It's based on impervious area, and what I mean by that is pavement, sidewalks, driveways, rooftops, places where stormwater used to infiltrate into the soil and it doesn't anymore. An impervious area is a good proxy for determining downstream stormwater impacts. So it's a good way to assess a fee to pay for mitigation of those impacts. The way we do it here in Raleigh, and this was based on a statistical study back in 2003 as we were setting up the stormwater utility, a median single-family house has 2,260 square feet of impervious area. And that's what we've defined as our equivalent unit for stormwater. So one equivalent unit pays a monthly bill of $7.18. And that goes on the bill that our partners Raleigh Water send out. So it's right there with the water and sewer bill as well as solid waste. And then for commercial property that has a lot more impervious area typically, we use aerial mapping. We measure that impervious surface on each parcel of property and then calculate how many equivalent units that is. So in this situation, 47,303 square feet of impervious area equals 20.93 equivalent units. And so they pay 20.93 times that $7.18 fee monthly, and that's the bill. And when we do it this way, based on the way our impervious surface is spread throughout the city, 2/3 of our fees actually come from commercial properties, all those larger parking lots, the larger buildings, and only 1/3 come from residential properties. A couple instances, the city pays this fee for our buildings. Another important aspect, we're a state capital, so there's a lot of state property. State property pays this fee. However, if our stormwater program had been paid for by property taxes, state property does not pay property taxes. So it is a better way of distributing the actual impacts and the costs associated with those impacts, especially here in a capital city. A little bit of history of our fee. As I mentioned, it was set up in 2004. We started billing in FY 2004. And then for 12 years, our fee stayed the same at $4. In FY 17, it went up $1, stayed the same for a few more years. And then in 21 and 22, we made some more moderate bumps in the increase. In 50 cents in 21 and $1.50 in 22. That allowed us to add some programs. We added a lot of programs related to green stormwater infrastructure. It allowed us to ramp up our capital improvements project and start doing more projects. Then this fiscal year that we're in right now was a more modest increase, 18 cents or 2.5% in this fiscal year. And we believe that we will be able to continue to make those more modest increases moving forward and support our programs. In fact, our proposal for FY24 is to also make another 18 cents per month increase, and that would bring our median equivalent unit fee from $7.18 to $7.36 per month. That would generate approximately just under $36 million and allow us to dedicate about $12.6 million to our capital improvements program. And here's what that breakdown looks like over time. These bars are broken into two pieces. The lower bar, the green, is the operating costs over time. The upper portion of the bar is the capital improvements, and you can see how those budgets have increased over time, getting us to about $36 million. Now, I do want to note, if you look at FY21 and 22, there is a small bar in the middle. And what happened there was in FY19 and 20, we had lots of rain, some very significant rainfalls, and we had some infrastructure failures that were unexpected as a result of that rainfall. So with council's permission, we went and borrowed some money from our fund balance so we could go ahead and make emergency repairs to that infrastructure, which we did. Then in FY21 and 22, in order to be fiscally prudent, we wanted to pay back that fund balance so we could continue to meet our fiscal policy, which we have now done, and we continue to meet our fiscal policy of at least 50% of our operating funds to have in our fund balance. And that will be important moving forward from a credit rating standpoint, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. We continue to update our estimate of known stormwater capital improvement needs. We look at this through watershed planning, through condition assessment of our infrastructure, and our best estimate at this time is just shy of $850 million of known needs that we have identified. Now, using our FY23 pay-as-you-go or pay-go, that would take about 75 years to get through that need. Even with an increase in FY24, it would still be about 67 years. So what we've been working on very closely with our budget and finance departments is to put together a debt finance strategy, as well as ramping up our and getting more aggressive in terms of our grant strategy. And here's what that would allow us to do. So if we look at our next 5 years, just a pay-go program, we could deliver about $69 million of projects. But if we implement a debt financing program, and this would be the first time the stormwater program would have done this within our history, we would be able to ramp up and deliver $95 million over the next 5 years. So that allows us to deliver those known CIP projects more quickly. And with our sophisticated rate model, we can do this still keeping very modest incremental increases in those rates moving forward. As I'd said, we're also getting much more aggressive in pursuing grants, and we've been successful. Thankfully to City Council, we did get some of the city's ARPA allocation, and we are moving forward with 5 projects right now focused in disproportionately impacted and vulnerable communities with that funding. The one you may be most familiar with, which would be the largest project stormwater's done in our history, is the Rose Lane Neighborhood Flood Mitigation Project. This is a road across Walnut Creek that floods on a regular basis, twice per year, and completely cuts off access to a neighborhood of about 55 homes. Many of those homes are Habitat for Humanity built homes. So this is a vulnerable community that when this happens, they can't get to school, they can't get to work. There have been swift water rescues at this location. So this is a high priority project for us. We've gotten the design funding moving, and we will continue to look at implementing this project with the proposed debt financing model that we're using. A number of other really interesting projects: Worthday Park stream restoration, Lions Park green stormwater retrofit, mitigating heat island effects with green stormwater infrastructure, as well as a cost match subsidy for our rainwater rewards, and several other projects that we've been able to get funding from North Carolina Land and Fund, DEQ, and Walnut Creek Wetland Gravel Monitoring Grant from DEQ. So lots of interesting and exciting work going on. Benchmarking against our peers, our rate is really pretty much right in the middle. The bars here, the white bars are the North Carolina communities. The blue bars are other capitals in the southeast U.S. that have stormwater utilities. As I said, being a capital is particularly helpful to have a stormwater utility to fund. And with our fee at $7.18, even with the proposed moving up to $7.30, doesn't change our position. We pretty much stay right in the middle of our peer cities with that rate. So the recommendation that we request at this point in time is to authorize Raleigh Stormwater to use the proposed rate, really at this point only to begin programming and testing the billing system. As I'd mentioned, we rely on Raleigh Water's billing system to help us, and this is a best practice that we have borrowed from Raleigh Water to help get ready, so that if it is approved, we would be ready to start making that charge in the next fiscal year. And then ultimately, though, and the other best practice is notify our largest customers that this may be anticipated, this change in budget. And then finally, the rate approval will occur with the adoption of the full FY24 budget upon council's approval. And I would be glad to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Councilmember Ford?
Thank you for the presentation, Wayne. I'd love to see the collaboration between your department and the parks. Stephen and his staff, we had a pretty extensive conversation with folks at Method, so Stephen's going to be come knocking on your door.
Absolutely.
To ask for some assistance with a couple of things. But if you can go back to your pie charts for a second.
Yes. This one?
Yeah. So for people who may be watching, the gray area is aging infrastructure. So somewhere between 13 and 14 million would take care of all of the aging infrastructure in the city.
That's our projection of what we know about right now. We are doing watershed studies, and as part of those watershed studies, our transportation field services staff put television cameras through all of the city infrastructure and pole cameras, and will determine the condition and how much longer of a life those pipes have. And we have extrapolated that across the city, but we're starting with our oldest portions of the city to do those investigations first, thinking that that will be where the highest percentage of pipe may need to be replaced. So it is an estimate, but it is an estimate citywide.
Okay. And as a follow-up, I know we get a lot of folks who talk to us about stormwater issues when new developments coming online and things along those lines. So with the major CIP, could you sort of describe for folks what that would actually cover?
Yeah, so good question. So major CIP, it does have a number of neighborhood flood mitigation projects, and oftentimes when we go into a neighborhood that has flooding, oftentimes there are multiple houses and road crossings that have some flooding concerns. We'll go in and do a comprehensive look at the hydraulics through that neighborhood, and it often takes multiple improvements. It might take some culvert improvements under the road to keep the road from overtopping. Occasionally it does require us to purchase a property that just can't be otherwise mitigated. We also, when we're upgrading pipes, a lot of times we'll increase the velocities downstream, so we'll have to do some stream stabilization and stream restoration as part of those projects. So we have several of those types of projects going on. Another big part of the major CIP is lakes and dams. The city has a number of dams that we own and operate. Many of those are in parks. Some of them are just because there's a city road that crosses over the dam. Camp Pond Dam is one that we're working on right now, and those have aging infrastructure issues as well. So, and those are higher risk because if they fail, they can have downstream impacts, they can have transportation impacts. So those projects are a big part of our major CIP as well. Those two groups are probably the biggest part of that major CIP.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to first, I love seeing the cost match on the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards program. I think there's a lot of people who are interested in that program, but even after the reimbursement, that's still a little bit out of reach for them financially. So I'm excited to see that happening. One question I did have on the slide with the bar charts, I was curious if you could just explain some of the factors that cause our peer cities to either be cheaper or more expensive. Like what contributes to that?
Yeah, good question. I think some of it is the maturity of the program. We've had a fee in place now since 2003, so I think that allows us to slowly build up. We're getting to be much more of a mature program. I think we have generally been pretty proactive with our watershed studies. I know that a few of these on the upper end programs have had to ramp up their fees fairly quickly because they have a big project that becomes a high priority and high risk quickly because it's an aging infrastructure, maybe failing downtown that is causing a lot of impacts that they have to really ramp up and kind of catch up a little bit. Some of the lower programs, like Greensboro, for example, they have a water resources program and stormwater is in with water and sewer. That money kind of gets blended, I think, and they do some projects together that keeps their fee a little bit lower. But it's hard to generalize too much. But we do believe that we bring a lot for the fee that we charge to our residents. A lot of programs like the drainage assistance and the rainwater rewards programs that you mentioned, those are fairly unique. There's not many other communities in Raleigh or really across the country that have those types of programs. And that rainwater reward subsidy program, we agree. We're excited about that. We're going to use ARPA funds to do this pilot, but we're really working for that to be a permanent program and finding other funding sources to help with that subsidy as well.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Good work.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
I learned a few things in there. That was good.
Thank you.
Next, we have Solid Waste Services. Stan?
Madam Mayor, councilors, good afternoon. I'm Stan Joseph, your Solid Waste Services Director. It's our privilege to present to you our proposed budget for FY 2024. I want to be sensitive to your time, but I do feel compelled to introduce some of our team members from Solid Waste that are joining us here today to provide support. We have Mr. Jerry Adams, who is over our core services. Adrian Sykes is over our special services. And Mr. Tim Gaynor, who's over our yard waste center. The three of these gentlemen handle all aspects of operations and all the services that we deliver to almost 500,000 customers in the city of Raleigh. They put in a lot of long hours, and most of the times they're in safety vests, so they're nice and cleaned up here today. Kathleen Mitchell is here. Kathleen is our fiscal supervisor, and Kathleen and her team are exceptional stewards of taxpayer dollars. She even makes me fill out forms in order to get a box of pens, which I don't mind. Marianne Sweden, our administrative manager, is here. She oversees our customer service, payroll, communications, training, and employee relations, probably a couple other things as well. And last but not least, Ms. Shadell Lassiter, who's my Assistant Director of Administration. She's not here today. About an hour ago, she got called out for a family emergency. I'm sure she would like to be here in spirit with us. Shadell provides leadership in every program of our department, and she's a trusted advisor and partner and capable of running this entire department. This city is lucky to have such amazing employees, and I'm honored to serve with them and the entire solid waste team. Today's agenda gives a quick departmental overview and speaks to a couple of key accomplishments this year. We covered some of this during our last meeting on the 21st. I do want to spend some time talking about the yard waste options that Council asked us to bring back. Then I'd like to get into our proposed 24 base budget. Solid Waste Services provides curbside collection services to just under 124,000 residential households. Of those customers, just over 1,800 are serviced as part of our need assistance program. Our need assistance program provides backdoor collection service for customers who are unable to safely move their carts around to the curb due to a permanent or temporary disability. All of our customers receive weekly garbage, biweekly recycling, and biweekly yard waste. These critical services support various strategic plan initiatives related to sustainable growth and service delivery. These are a list of additional services that aren't covered by our normal user fees, and they fall outside the scope of the traditional business model for a solid waste program. They include a full-service yard waste processing facility that processes material into reusable products. In my opinion, that's one of the best examples of circular economy in the city of Raleigh. There are several other key services listed here that support your goals around reduction, reuse, and diversion. In addition, we provide several services that do not have any source of revenue. They continue to increase in demand as we grow and generate expenses for personnel and equipment costs that are normally not funded. Collectively, we do offer our customers a wide variety of services and make a great effort to protect the health, safety, and beauty of this Raleigh community. Our services are supported by 211 budgeted positions. Of those positions, we had at least 16% vacancy over the past year. Most of them were some of our most critical operational positions. It's no secret that staffing for the past few years continued to be a challenge across the city due to the competitive labor markets. These shortages in skilled labor have threatened public health services across the country. Despite these headwinds, our employees have been able to maintain a high-quality level of service to our residents and still advance our key initiatives forward. One of our key initiatives this year involved going through the city's RFP process. A new recycling processing facility opened up in our area, and for the first time ever, we were able to use the city's RFP process to leverage and secure a competitive advantage. We received and vetted 2 proposals, and in January, after thoroughly reviewing them, we selected our current longtime partner, Sunoco, as our Raleigh recycling processor. You'll see this contract on your March 21st agenda for your approval. The new contract will take effect 1 July of this year. Another key accomplishment was our CBD outreach campaign. We first approached Council in May of 2022 about contamination concerns in the Central Business District. At the time, recycling carts in the CBD often had more than 70% of the material contaminated. Over the past year, our staff has launched several targeted outreach campaigns. We've partnered with Downtown Raleigh Alliance and City Communications to distribute digital and print material on proper recycling preparation. Our next steps will be hosting an in-person outreach opportunities in the spring. As we approach spring and our gardens start coming alive, we reflect on the services that the city provides for yard waste. Our yard waste enhancement became effective July 5th, 2022. Over the past year, our staff has worked diligently with our customers during this transition. The first 6 months of the program, we fielded a record high number of customer questions on the new service limitations. With the help of our partners in utility billing and city communications, we kept our customers informed, but we also collected their very important feedback about the program. Now that some time has passed, we've had opportunities to collect even more data at the curb, analyze customer feedback, and look for opportunities to enhance the service even further. When we met with you last month, we provided 3 options based on customer feedback. As a reminder, here are those 3 options. During the presentation, there was a general consensus to bring back more information on options 1 and 2. We also discussed 3 key areas. First, we discussed the importance of moving towards more automated service in the city. It's safer for our employees, and it provides increased reliability for our customers. Secondly, there was feedback from you and many of our customers that they like rollout carts but they want more of them. Finally, we discussed that every area, every landscape is unique in this city, and at times it's difficult to provide a level of service that meets everyone's expectations. That being said, we have some good news. We feel that both options, 1 and 2, that Council wanted us to bring back, aligns with the future of our curbside yard waste program. Based on customer feedback, we believe that this will address the important feedback that we've been receiving from them. But we can't get there overnight. What we would like to do is make a gradual change over the next year that will ultimately align customer expectations with the available resources. So we are proposing a phased approach. We start working on option 1 right away, only to build on it at a later date. So let me break this down. With option 1, let me see if I can make this thing work here. With option 1, we provide what we're doing right now, which is the biweekly collection. We make no changes to the 15 bags and 5 bundles, but we start working towards the ability to provide an extra cart for our residents. One thing to note is that in order to charge an additional fee for additional carts, we would need to separate our yard waste from our garbage fees. Currently, yard waste is charged under our garbage fees all in one lump sum, so we would have to separate that out. Our billing system has limitations, and our partners in utility billing would not be able to make this change by July 1st. The good news is if the proposal is approved, we should be able to implement this midway through the fiscal year, which gives us an opportunity to really do a strong communication plan and get the word out to our residents. So that's option 1. We move over to option 2. We build on option 1 with option 2. In it, we propose weekly collection, which automatically further increases the capacity at the curb for our residents. We also allow 5 bags, compostable bags per week, which is equivalent of what we're at right now, which would be 10 bags for biweekly. And residents would also be able to call in and schedule bundles to be picked up, much like they do right now for bulky and special loads. Finally, we provide customers the options to purchase 4 additional city-issued carts with the same fee structure as option 1, which would also be at a $2 per cart charge. Now, will a lot of our residents want to have 5 yard waste carts at the curb every week? Likely not, but if they want it, they can. This model customizes the level of service to meet our individual customer needs. If approved, we can expect to execute option 2 by fiscal year 2025. The phased approach to implementing option 1 and option 2 with cart limitations are very comparable to neighboring municipalities. As you can see, compared to Winston-Salem, Durham, Cary, Wake Forest, and Wendell, option 1 and option 2 does provide a certain limited amount of carts. Certainly, if we approve option 1 and option 2, we would have 5 carts compared to Durham's 4 carts maximum. Our FY24 budget proposal supports these program changes, and should we receive your approval today. I'd like to switch gears for a minute and get into our FY24 base budget proposal. Like most of the city, we share some of the same challenges with our cost drivers. Employment expenses have increased 8.6% over FY23. Fuel has increased a whopping 31%. Fuel is one of our largest expenses. Last year, our drivers logged over 1.1 million miles throughout the city. That's enough miles to leave from the Outer Banks and drive to San Diego 366 times in 1 year. Our vehicle M&O cost has also increased 14%, indirect costs 5.4%. Our total expense increases for the year was $2.7 million. We saw similar increases like these in FY23 budget. Personnel increased by 8.7%, fuel 14%, M&O by 8%, and indirect costs by 5%. Bottom line, Year over year, our revenues are at 2%, and our expenses continue to grow upward of 3%, and that's not sustainable. As an enterprise, the general fund contribution has been vital to the stability of our budget each year. Based on our projected revenues, even with the general fund subsidy, we are still left with a $4.5 million budget gap. We often find ourselves putting off key initiatives like a new facility for card operations or delaying or setting aside funds for our capital planning for the future. To help close this gap, we are proposing a $2.10 increase to our garbage fee. That increases our current fee from $15.70 to $17.80. Our recycling fee will remain the same at $4.60. This moves our total fee to what is currently at $2.30 to $22.40 effective July 1st of this year. We are also proposing a modest increase per ton to our yard waste center rates. These rates would not impact our residents, but only our commercial customers. Again, if you approve our phased approach to option 1 and 2, we would need to create a separate yard waste fee. Breaking that down, our $17.80 fee would be broken down $12.90 for garbage, $4.90 for yard waste, which equals out to our overall $22.40 overall fee. And just a reminder that if we chose to go with additional carts, it would be $2 per month for a second cart. These are the current rates throughout the area. As you can see, even if we increase our rates, we remain comparative to the surrounding areas. Considering the inflation municipalities all over the country are facing, it's likely all of these cities will increase rates for FY24 as well. Several of them have already reached out to me to gather information as they review their rates for the next year. If approved, our proposed rate increases generate $3.3 million in revenue. The additional revenue supports the $2.7 million increase on fixed expenses year over year. The remaining $1.1 million of expenses will be covered through the use of our fund balance. These are several of our one-time items that we budgeted for, things like our organic feasibility study and our yard waste shredder purchase. Our current fund balance is $12.9 million, so fortunately we do have available funds to use. We would like council support at this time in authorizing solid waste services to do the following. First, move forward with proposed service level changes for option 1 and option 2. That's the phased approach that I spoke to you about earlier. We'd like you to approve the proposed rate increase, which would not take effect until the actual voting of our budget. And we'd like you to approve the new fee structure, which would allow us to begin separating the yard waste fee from the garbage fee and move towards allowing a monthly charge for additional yard waste cart. In addition, we'd also like to begin, much like stormwater, programming and testing the city's billing system to adopt this new fee structure. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Definitely, thank you for the presentation and information. If someone opted out of the yard basket the first time, will they still be opted out is part one of my question. And part two of the question is, could someone opt out of getting a second cart?
They'd actually have to opt into it.
Okay, so they'll have to opt in. So no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're currently receiving yard waste service and you have a cart, you've got your bags, you would have to opt into the service once we get it online, and you would pay that $2 monthly fee.
Okay. Cool.
Regarding your first question about, does that answer both of them, or?
I'll let you. Well, I'll ask it again. If someone didn't originally, if they currently do not have the lime green cart.
Yeah. Gotcha.
How would they still have to opt in if they wanted to receive the service going forward?
Yeah, so if someone currently has already opted out of the lime green card.
Right.
Unless they want it back, they would stay that way.
Okay.
And if they wanted it back, we would bring it out to them, and they would still have the opportunity to get a second card for an additional fee. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, following up on that, if you separate the fees, then people who are opted out will not pay the yard waste fee at all? People who don't have any green cards right now?
The only folks, right now, everyone pays the garbage fee, which includes for yard waste service. So they would not be able to opt out of it. That's a mandatory fee to provide yard waste services that are available to everyone.
Understood. Okay. I'm suspecting that we would get resident feedback if they were like, well, I opted out of the cart and you're still making me pay the fee.
Yeah, but they would still have the ability for bags and bundles, so.
Cool. The other question that I had, I wanted to verify this timeline. So if we take this phased approach from option 1 to option 2, you're saying that option 1 cannot be implemented right on July 1st, that it would be implemented mid-year, and then option 2 would be implemented in FY25. Does that mean that we would only be on option 1 for like 6 months?
I think it would probably be the later part of FY25. I think we would be, if we're able to get the billing right and execute mid-fiscal year, we could potentially go a full year before we fully implement. This is a tentative date.
Got it. Okay, understood. My concern was around transitioning our entire city to a new system and then to another new system and the length of time it takes to get all our residents on board with those types of habit changes. And so I'm comforted to know that we would not be switching 6 months into a new process.
And I think, if we're strategic about our communication plan, we can talk about timelines for all of this at once.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Stan.
Thank you.
Next, we have Raleigh Water. Whit?
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. I'm Whit Wheeler with Raleigh Water, and I want to thank you for having me here today to present our proposed FY24 budget. This is our agenda for today. First, we'll go over a few accomplishments from the past year. We'll talk about cost drivers for our operating budget and our capital improvement program. We'll talk about our rate model. We'll provide a rate recommendation. And finally, we'll discuss our customer assistance and affordability efforts. We again achieved 100% compliance at all 5 of our treatment facilities this year. You'll notice that the how many years in consecutive order we've provided this. This success is due to a combination of council providing the funding needed to properly operate and maintain the plants and our staff's dedication to their jobs. Our bioenergy recovery project is ongoing but should be up and running by the end of this calendar year. This project will reduce our waste solids by 50% and provide compressed natural gas to fuel our buses by the spring of '24. Both our sewer maintenance and resource recovery divisions maintain the ISO 14001 Environmental Management System certification, and the Neuse River Resource Recovery Facility was again able to exceed the limits of technology with effluent nitrogen concentrations less than 2.3 parts per billion. Raleigh Water was voted best tasting water in the state at the North Carolina One Water Conference this year. Our E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant maintained the Partnership for Safe Water Directors Award status, and the Dempsey Benton Water Plant maintained the President's Award status. The Partnership for Safe Water is an unprecedented alliance of 6 prestigious drinking water organizations, including the EPA. And this was also the 11th consecutive year we received the Area-Wide Optimization Award for filter performance from the North Carolina Public Water Supply. So switching to our operational budget, our proposed FY24 operating budget is $262.8 million. The primary cost drivers for our budget are financing and capital improvement program in the form of pay-go cash and debt service, and this makes up about 53% of our budget. The remainder is primary funding our operational expenses such as personnel costs, salaries, retirements, benefits, the chemicals and energy needed to run our treatment plants, and of course equipment and supplies that we need to maintain our distribution and collection system. We have seen a significant impact from inflation in our operating budget this year. Construction costs have increased to about 59%, operational supplies 19%, treatment chemicals 38%, and we also expect our energy costs to go up about 8% this year. Our expenses are basically broken down into three buckets. Our operating expenses, represented by the blue bars across the bottom, our debt service, which are our payments for principal and interest, represented by the green bars in the middle, and our pay-go cash for capital projects, represented by the gray bars across the top. This chart shows how our three cost buckets have changed over time, and the biggest change over time has been the pay-go funding for capital projects. Pay-go has increased most significantly since 2015 when we started implementing the infrastructure replacement charges on the utility bill. Maintaining the financial metrics necessary to obtain and retain our AAA bond ratings has also helped generate pay-go funding. Our 10-year capital improvement plan is about $2.2 billion. About 40% of that is in pipe replacement. For us, that's an $875 million pipe dream. Our water treatment plant improvements make up about 26%. Most of that's going on at the E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant. Wastewater pump stations, 13%. Wastewater treatment plant improvements, 12%. And all other projects, which are like facilities, resiliency projects. We've got some work going on at Lake Wheeler Dam, and operating software make up the remaining 9%. Some of the largest projects we have ongoing, our bioenergy project, which we talked about just earlier, $225 million. The E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant flocculation sedimentation project, it'll actually double the capacity of our sedimentation basins in the same footprint using new technology at a cost of $48 million. And then we have our West Neuse Sewer Interceptor, our Neuse River twin 72-inch sewer interceptors, and Crabtree Valley Sewer Interceptor projects, which are all major critical aging infrastructure replacement. We've got a lot of concrete sewer pipe in the system that's deteriorating from sewer gas. And the three of those projects are about $183 million. We use a rate model to forecast revenues and expenditures each year. You may recall the presentation last Tuesday by our financial consultant that discussed the importance of our rate models to ensure financial viability. Predicting actual revenues and expenditures is important in the model, so we align utility rates with the actual cost to operate the utility. We start by looking at the first 5 months of actual revenues and expenditures in the current fiscal year. We use that in combination with historical performance to project where we think fiscal year 23 will end up. In the rate model, we are assuming 1.25% growth in consumption and 1.5% growth in accounts. The rate model also assumes that pay-go cash will be prioritized to fund projects so that we can delay debt service payments. You may recall the large budget transfer you approved on the February 21st council agenda. This transfer was necessary to make these adjustments. The model also assumes steady rate increases in the out years and meets our financial and debt policy goals and covenants beyond 2027. Meeting these financial goals and covenants has allowed us to achieve and maintain AAA credit ratings from all three rating agencies, which gives us access to the lowest interest rates. This was also discussed in detail by our financial consultant at last Tuesday's meeting. This year, we will need a rate increase to stay on track with our rate model and make the necessary improvements in our infrastructure. The rate recommendation is to apply a 4% increase to the base and volumetric water and sewer charges on the utility bill with no adjustments to the infrastructure or watershed charges. This results in a 3.5% or $1.77 increase to the median single-family residential customer that uses 4 CCFs. This chart shows the current monthly bill amount for the median single-family customer compared with the proposed increases necessary to meet the financial metrics in our rate model and make the needed investments in our water and sewer systems. Okay, so how do we compare to our neighbors? These are rates from utilities around the triangle, and what you'll see is that we are far left of the center. We do anticipate that our neighbors will need rate increases as well because they have similar issues as we do with investments in their system, but we do not believe that what we're proposing will change our position in this comparison. Approximately 74% of our customers are in Raleigh, with the other 26% in our merger communities. 94% of our customers are residential, but only consume 67% of the water produced. The map on the right shows the average customer bill by census tract and ranging from $48 in green to $82 in red. As you saw during last Tuesday's council meeting, Raleigh Water has completed the first phase of our affordability study based on metrics published by the Environmental Protection Agency. A statistical analysis of our customer data and the 2020 U.S. Census data indicates approximately 9,400 customers in our service area potentially face unaffordable bills. In comparison, customer assistance programs last year dispersed $2.3 million to over 5,000 customers. Phase 2 of our study is focused on a more detailed determination of affordability in Raleigh and what measures need to be taken with the customer assistance programs to meet the needs of our customers. And we are working on addressing, several of you had questions from the presentation last week. We're working on pulling that information together, and we expect to have that to you by the end of the month. Okay, so just like stormwater and solid waste, we are also requesting time to prepare our billing system and inform our largest customers about their potential budget impacts. We also need to prepare documentation for our upcoming bond sales. And so since voting is not typically done during the budget work session, this is where we see if there is a general consensus that we can begin that process with the understanding that the final rate approval will occur with the adoption of the city's fiscal year 24 budget. With that, I'll be glad to take questions.
Do we have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
First of all, thank you for the information and presentation. And you've kind of had 2 questions, and you've kind of answered one of mine with phase 2 completion, looking at how we can assist customers. My question is, I know right now we limit, I think it's $240.
That's correct.
Is the max someone can receive. Can we also look at that number and see what adjustments that needs to be adjusted as we increase our rates?
We absolutely will be doing that. That's a big part of that process is to try to, as I said, find out, we were using EPA metrics to assess affordability. We want to dive in and find out what is affordability in Raleigh and what are the right numbers where those thresholds should be, so that we can get the maximum impact from the funds we have.
And my second question is, we constantly hear, residents come in and talk about high bills, and high bills. And sometimes, it takes a lot to get a plumber to come in and try to find if they have a leak or don't have a leak and things of that nature. I know with our public safety, if they have an issue with cars on the street, they have a rotating service of tow trucks, companies that they call on to go out and tow those trucks and move them. From a water standpoint, and this is the idea I just thought of sitting here, so I'm going to put it out there and let you all take it and vet it.
Okay.
Is there a way for us to set up a rotating plumber service that residents could call upon to help them find a potential leak, if they have one or not, to help them understand their water bill. So that's the ask. I know that takes some work to look into, and I know it's not cheap, but I know we can't compete against the private sector. That's why I'm using the similar service
Right.
we have
Right.
with tow trucks, maybe something with plumbers, and those companies can opt in to this and be part of that rotation to help, and we can figure out what costs it would be for them to do that.
And it may give our customers some assurance knowing that it's gone through this.
Right, and
Right,
also
right.
that they found a plumber that is been quote unquote approved.
Right. Okay. We'll definitely look into that. Thank you for that suggestion.
Okay. Councilmember Fort.
I have a different question. I know we have a number of municipalities that we service or provide water service for. Taking a deep breath before I ask this question. Have we asked them to contribute in any way to some of the infrastructure or some of the other things that you have needs for beyond their customers or their residents paying for water service? Or is that between the city attorney, city manager, and you, is that something that we should be looking at?
Well, they're all merged in to the utility fund, so it's all part of the enterprise. So it's basically they're paying infrastructure renewal charges just like folks in Raleigh are, and so that's where that funding comes from.
The municipalities.
I'm sorry.
You mean the residents?
I mean the residents, the customers.
Yeah,
We're not.
I'm asking a different question.
Okay.
Are the municipalities at their level getting bonds and doing anything to contribute? Because
Not to the water and sewer infrastructure. So when the arrangements came forward where we actually did the mergers with these other utilities, there was a whole prescribed criteria for, okay, you have to do this number of projects to make sure that your utility is somewhat equal to Raleigh's utility to buy in. So that we were on many years, if you remember, we had different rate structures. And the difference in those rate structures were to pay for those projects during that period to try to create an equal playing field as we move forward. So since we've all merged, there's none of that going on now.
And Councilor Ford, all of that is controlled by interlocal agreements that were signed at the time of the merger. And so all of that is fixed and not subject to change.
Councilmember Jones.
After listening to Waste Management and their staffing, how is your staffing?
We are at a 16% vacancy rate.
Okay.
But we have a job fair in a couple of weeks, so we're very optimistic.
What day is your job fair?
It's on the 23rd, I think.
Where?
Oh, it'll be at Lake Woodard. Lake Woodard, we've got it on a Friday and a Saturday.
The 24th and 25th.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Marshall.
And so while it's still higher than our traditional averages, it is lower than it was 8-9 months ago.
Yeah.
So we're
What was it 8-9 months ago?
upwards of 20%.
So what have we done that has brought it down? What is?
I think people have spent up stimulus money and people are looking for jobs, and some of the places that hired a lot of people at higher rates of pay have laid off some people.
Yeah,
in the market, quite frankly.
Yeah, we're working with HR on how to fine tune that recruiting process too. So that's part of what this job fair is about.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Whit.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
That is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else, City Manager, you would like to add?
No, other than this is the second of our series of budget work sessions that sort of kind of help to lay the foundation for how our enterprise funds work and how we go at establishing what the appropriate rates are or what they should be so that we cover our costs to provide the services while retaining somewhat of a savings to be able to pay for emergency situations if we have a major break or something of that nature. And so today you saw from our enterprise funds that are out doing the work every single day that people see. And if the trash is not picked up or if there's a water line break or a sewer backup, those are the calls we get. day and night, doesn't matter what time, and I'm sure you all are starting to get some of those calls as well. So it's important that we make sure that we have the appropriate level of funding and resourcing in place to be able to provide the services that not only our customers expect and demand, but that we are mandated to provide as a full-service local government.
Just wait for yard waste season.
And that's it.
Okay.
What time to,
With
time
that
to
then,
spare? Yes.
we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.